Good morning. It is time for your morning dose of food poisoning for thought. Today we're going to talk about Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, an adventure of mind and spirit. Over 1.5 million copies in print, which is really cool, and winner of the Turner Tomorrow Fellowship Award, award for the book most likely to create positive change in the future. I used to work as a bookseller, and this was my staff pick. I sold this book over 5,000 times to people over the course of 3 years. Hand sold it again and again and again and again. I just sold this book like nobody's business. And I did so with a very simple sales pitch. And what I'm going to do for you this morning is I'm going to give you that sales pitch. So we'd start by asking people if they'd read Ishmael, or if they'd heard of it. People would say no, not at all. And they would ask sometimes, is it a biblical book? Because the name Ishmael is from the Bible. I'd say no, the main character is named after the biblical character of Ishmael. That's where it comes from. And then I would say, all right, so this is my favorite book. I think it is one of the most important books ever written. And I can explain to you why in about a minute. I'd like to give you my 1-minute sales pitch. I think it's probably longer than a minute, but I've never timed it before. It goes like this. So, a book opens with a man who's never named, reading a newspaper, and he reads a classified ad that says, "Teacher seeks pupil. Must have earnest desire to save the world. Please apply in person." He reads this, and he gets very angry, because, as he describes it, when he was a young man, the hippies were just starting to get rolling, and he desperately wanted to find some sort of a teacher who could explain to him why everything was so screwed up. And he went looking, and all he found was charlatan after charlatan after charlatan. And so now here he is, an adult, and there's somebody advertising for exactly the kind of young dreamer that he was, and he's sure that the person who placed this ad is just another charlatan, like the ones he found when he was younger. And so he gets this kind of self-righteous, I've got to do something feeling. And he marches straight off down to the address. That was my phone. And he marches straight off to the address so that he can confront this charlatan and save all the little young versions of himself that he expects are going to be just lining up to be led off like the Pied Piper's children. He's expecting a crowd of would-be cultists and a very skeezy would-be cult leader. He gets there, and there's nobody there. Just the title character Ishmael, the teacher who seeks a pupil. And so now he's kind of on the spot. He went there to free the slaves, as it were, and there's no one to free. So he's standing there and he says to Ishmael, "All right, I'm here. What do you teach?" And Ishmael says to him, "I teach captivity." That kind of pulls the guy back. He says, "Wait, captivity? Your ad says, must have earnest desire to save the world. What does captivity have to do with saving the world?" And Ishmael asks him, "Well, amongst the people of your culture, how many wish to destroy the world?" And the man thinks about this, and he says, "I don't know anyone who wants to destroy the world." And Ishmael says to him, "And yet you are, every day, by your actions. Does this need explaining?" The man says, "No, not to me." And Ishmael says to him, "Excellent. Then why don't you stop?" And the man thinks about this, and he finally says, "We don't know how to stop." And Ishmael says to him, "Precisely. You are held captive by a system, by a story, that basically compels you to destroy the world in order to live in it. If you'd like to save the world, shouldn't you find out what's keeping you captive?" And the book is the exploration of what he means by that. The book is written as a Socratic dialogue, and its writing style is something you'll either love or hate. I've met very few people that are neutral on it. The subject matter is something that you will either find speaks to your soul or makes you want to throw it across the room. For most people, it feels like they've opened up something that they've always known, but no one's been able to properly articulate. That niggling thing at the edge of their vision that they weren't able to see before. There are 2 other books in the series. There's My Ishmael, which is a direct sequel to Ishmael, although it's not a sequel in the sense that it occurs afterwards. The whole premise, of course, is teacher seeks pupil, must have earnest desire to save the world. In Ishmael, the student, the pupil, is a 30-year-old man. In My Ishmael, the student is a 12-year-old girl. They're being taught at the same time, and they actually bump into each other a little bit, but not very much. The point is that they cover the similar ground in very different ways, so that they can walk over the same subject matter and have it feel entirely original. The 3rd book in the series is a much more different, much more divergent story arc. It follows what happens to one of Ishmael's students when he leaves, after he's done, as opposed to the teaching process. I may go into looking at that one later on, but I'm going to leave it for today. So this was Ishmael, and I suppose a little bit of My Ishmael. I highly recommend both. If you're an adult, start with Ishmael. If you haven't graduated high school yet, start with My Ishmael. There's no negative to starting with either one of them. But that's it. I can't recommend this book enough. When I was selling this book as a bookseller, I made a promise, again, over 5,000 times, however many times I sold this book. I said, look, if you don't like it, return it. If the store will not let you take it back, come to me and I will buy it back from you personally. I never, ever had to honor that promise. Nobody ever brought it back. The book just doesn't get returned. Because people look at it and go, well, wow, okay, yeah. So there you go. That's some food poisoning for thought for you to chew on. And possibly, this is, in my opinion, possibly the most important book ever written, the most subversive book ever written, the most profound book ever written. It would not be an exaggeration to say that this book is almost my Bible. Have a great day.